The first time I saw him, I thought he was a ghost. The way he stood beneath the flickering light of that abandoned station, silent and still, made the air freeze in my lungs. The station had been empty for years, its platforms rotting, its walls scarred with graffiti and time. No trains had passed through since the river flood swept the tracks away a decade ago. But there he was, tall and unshaken, like he belonged to the ruin itself. His presence unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain, a pull both terrifying and magnetic. I wasn't supposed to be there. No one was. The locals said the place was cursed, that the ghosts of those who died in the accident still roamed the platforms, waiting for a train that would never come. I never believed in that sort of thing, but curiosity had a way of dragging me where I shouldn't be. I had been wandering the Riverside, my head cluttered with the usual chaos of college life, broken relationships, and a loneliness I couldn't quite name. The abandoned station drew me like a beacon, its dark silhouette rising against the twilight sky. Maybe I wanted to scare myself, or maybe I was just tired of pretending to live a normal life. And then I saw him. He didn't flinch when I approached, didn't even blink when the crunch of gravel under my sneakers echoed through the silence. His eyes, shadowed but strangely alive, followed me like he was measuring my every move. "Place is off limits," he said finally, his voice rough but calm, like it hadn't been used in years. I should have turned back. I should have apologized and left. Instead, I blurted out something stupid. Are you a ghost?" That made him laugh or maybe scoff, I couldn't tell. But it broke the heaviness of the air around us. "Hardly, though I suppose some would prefer me dead." I swallowed hard, unsure whether to keep pushing or run. But something about him, his stillness, his aura of isolation felt familiar in a way that scared me. Like I was looking at a reflection of everything I tried to bury inside myself. "Then what are you doing here?" I asked. His gaze lifted past me, toward the tracks swallowed by weeds and rust. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, quietly, almost tenderly, "Keeping watch." Those two words hooked into me deeper than they should have. I didn't understand him, but I wanted to. Against my better judgment, I wanted to. And so began the nights I couldn't stay away from that place. I told myself I was only curious, that I just wanted to know who he was, why he haunted this forgotten station like a sentinel. But the truth was uglier, simpler. I was drawn to him. His name was Adrian. He didn't offer it willingly, but it slipped out one evening after I kept pestering him. He looked at me with something between irritation and amusement, as if no one had dared pry into his life in years. "What's your name?" he shot back. "Eli," I said, and his lips curved like he was filing it away, like my name mattered more than I thought it did. Adrian never told me much about himself, at least not in the beginning. He was like the station closed off, decayed, hiding secrets beneath the surface. But when he spoke, every word carried weight. Sometimes I'd find him staring at the river, eyes lost in the current as if it carried ghosts he couldn't let go of. One night, I sat beside him on the platform. The wooden planks groaned under our weight, but he didn't move. Our shoulders brushed, barely, and heat rushed through me like I'd been caught doing something forbidden. "Why this place?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "Because someone has to remember." "Remember what?" He turned then, his eyes sharper than the chill of the night air. "That not everything can be washed away. Not every story ends just because people want to forget it." His words left me shaken. They sounded like grief, like guilt, like a confession wrapped in riddles. I didn't know what pain he carried, but it pressed against me as if he wanted me to feel it too. And still I couldn't stop coming back. By the third week, I realized I was lying to myself. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was him. The way his walls cracked sometimes, just enough to let me glimpse the gentleness he buried so deep. The way he listened to me talk about my life, even though he never offered anything in return. The way his hand lingered too close to mine in the darkness, as if daring me to close the distance. There was something intoxicating about being with him, something dangerous. One evening, rain started pouring before I could head home. Adrian pulled me under the half-collapsed roof of the station, the shadows of broken beams caging us together. Water dripped from his hair, tracing his jaw. My heart stuttered like the world itself had stopped. "You'll get sick," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "So will you," I whispered back. For a moment, neither of us moved. The space between us throbbed with everything unspoken, everything forbidden. My fingers twitched, aching to touch him. His gaze flickered to my lips, and I swore I felt the earth tilt. But he stepped back, breaking the spell. "You should go," he muttered. I wanted to scream at him, to demand why he kept pushing me away when every glance, every accidental touch screamed the opposite. But I didn't. I left, drenched and shaking, wondering if I was already too far gone. The townspeople started noticing. When I mentioned the station to my roommate, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Nobody goes there, Eli. Not unless they're looking for trouble. You don't know the stories." "What stories?" He leaned in, his voice dropping. "They say the flood wasn't an accident, that someone messed with the tracks. A train derailed, people died, and the man responsible disappeared. Some think he still hides out there, keeping the place from being torn down." Cold dread seeped into me. I didn't want to believe it. But when I went back that night and looked at Adrian, I couldn't shake the thought. His guilt, his silence, his refusal to leave it all fit too well. Was I falling for a ghost? Or for a man cursed by his past? That night, I couldn't stop myself. "Adrian," I said, my voice trembling in the dark. "What really happened here?" His jaw tightened. His eyes burned with something raw and dangerous. For a moment, I thought he would tell me to leave for good. Instead, he whispered, "You don't want to know." But I did. God help me, I did. And when his hand finally touched mine, firm, desperate, almost trembling, I knew I was in too deep to ever turn back. He held my hand only for a heartbeat before letting go, as if he'd touched fire and realized too late it would burn. I wanted to pull him back, to beg him not to retreat again, but the look on his faceterment, almost pleading, froze me where I stood. "Why do you keep coming here, Eli?" he asked, his voice low but jagged with frustration. "Don't you understand? This place will only hurt you." I should have lied. Should have said I was just curious, that it was nothing. But the truth slipped out before I could stop it. "Because of you." Silence crashed between us. The rain still dripped from the roof, a rhythm steady enough to mark every second he didn't speak. My chest burned, terrified of what he might say, of what this might mean. When he finally moved, it wasn't what I expected. He turned away, pressing both hands against the graffiti-smeared wall, his shoulders trembling with restraint. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do," I whispered, even though my voice wavered. "And I think you feel it too." His laugh was hollow, bitter. "You think you want me, but you don't know who I am, what I've done." The rumors rang in my ears like a warning bell. The flood, the accident, the vanished man. For the first time, I let myself ask, was Adrian that man? And if he was, why did my heart ache more at the thought of him leaving than at the possibility of his guilt? The next day, I tried to distract myself. Classes blurred together, faces and voices fading into background noise. My roommate noticed my silence but didn't press. He thought I was just another college kid drowning in deadlines. He didn't know I was drowning in something far deeper. By the time dusk fell, I found myself walking toward the station again, no matter how much I told myself not to. Adrian was there as always. This time, though, he wasn't standing guard like a sentinel. He was sitting on the platform, head bowed, a bottle in his hand. He didn't notice me at first. The sight twisted something inside. Met his untouchable man who always seemed carved from stone now looked human, fragile, lost. "Adrian," I said softly. His head jerked up, surprise flickering in his eyes before it hardened back into his usual mask. "Thought I told you to stay away." "Yeah, well, I don't listen very well." I sat down beside him, close enough to feel the warmth of his body even through the chill night air. He didn't push me away this time. He just stared at the river, its black surface reflecting the fractured moonlight. After a long silence, he spoke, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard. Do you know what it's like to live every day carrying a death that isn't yours? My throat tightened. Tell me. He gripped the bottle tighter, knuckles white. 10 years ago, a train derailed here. The river had risen after days of rain, and the bridge gave way. Dozens died. His voice cracked on the last word, so soft I barely caught it. I held my breath, waiting. I was the one who was supposed to fix the track. His words fell like stones, heavy and unrelenting. I was a junior engineer then. They told me the bridge wasn't safe, but the company didn't care. I begged for more time. They told me to patch it, make it look fine. I did. And when the flood came, he broke off, his hand trembling around the bottle. They blamed me. Maybe they were right. I survived when they didn't. The air between us grew unbearably heavy. I could almost hear the screams of those lost passengers carried on the river wind. Adrian, I whispered, my chest aching for him. He turned to me, his eyes hollow. That's who you're so eager to fall for. A coward who couldn't save them. A murderer by negligence. I should have been horrified. I should have stood and walked away. But all I felt was a fierce, desperate need to reach him, to tear down the walls he'd built around his pain. You're not a murderer, I said, my voice sharp with conviction. You were forced into an impossible choice. You tried. You still carry it every day. That's not guilt, it's penance. His expression faltered, something fragile flickering behind his grief. He shook his head, but his hands trembled like he wanted to believe me. I come here because if I don't, he said, almost breaking, then who will? Who will remember them? Who will make sure this place isn't just erased like it never mattered? Tears stung my eyes. Without thinking, I reached out and covered his hand with mine. This time he didn't pull away. He let me hold him, our fingers lacing slowly, as if the smallest touch might shatter him. For the first time, I felt him lean into me, just barely, but enough to know that he was letting me share the weight he'd carried alone for so long. From then on, things shifted. Adrian still guarded himself, still tried to push me away with gruff warnings and bitter humor. But the distance between us grew thinner each night. Sometimes, I caught him watching me with an intensity that made my pulse race. Other times, his hand would brush mine accidentally, and neither of us would move away. One night, I brought a lantern and placed it on the platform between us. If you're going to keep remembering, I told him, then let me remember with you. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, but his silence was an answer in itself. The station became ours. We filled its silence with laughter, with stories, with moments so intimate they felt stolen. I told him about my fractured family, about the loneliness that had clung to me like a shadow for years. He listened without judgment, his quiet presence steadier than anything I'd ever known. In return, he let me in piece by piece. I learned he'd once dreamed of building bridges across the country, not watching them collapse. I learned he still woke at night hearing the screams of the lost. I learned that beneath his guilt was a man aching for connection, for forgiveness, for love. And slowly, dangerously, I gave it to him. One night, the line between us shattered. We had been walking the length of the broken tracks, the moonlight painting everything silver. I tripped on a loose rail, and Adrian caught me before I could fall. Our bodies collided, his arms steady around me, his breath warm against my ear. I looked up and the world fell away. There was no station, no river, no ghosts, only him. His eyes, stormy and searching. His lips inches from mine. My heart thundered so loud I thought it might break us both. Eli, he whispered, my name torn from him like a prayer. I didn't think, couldn't. I kissed him. It was desperate, messy, charged with years of grief and months of longing. He froze at first, then melted against me, his hands clutching my waist like he was terrified I'd vanish. The kiss deepened, and I tasted his sorrow, his need, his unspoken hope. When we broke apart, breathless, his forehead pressed to mine, he whispered, "You shouldn't love me." But the way he held me, trembling and unyielding, told me he wanted me to anyway. The days after were a blur of stolen touches, lingering glances, and whispered words in the dark. We were reckless, falling faster than either of us admitted. And yet, for every moment of sweetness, there was always the shadow of his past, a weight that never truly left him. It wasn't long before others began to notice. My roommate grew suspicious of my late nights. The townsfolk whispered more loudly when they saw me near the station, and I could feel something was coming. Something that would test everything we'd found in each other. But even then, even with danger closing in, I couldn't let him go. Because Adrian wasn't just the keeper of the station's secret anymore. He was the keeper of my heart. The kiss haunted me in the best and worst ways. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt Adrian's lips on mine again, hungry, hesitant, then devastatingly tender. Every time I woke up, my chest ached with the memory of how tightly he'd held me, as if I were the only thing keeping him from collapsing. But daylight was cruel. It reminded me that Adrian was a man who had spent a decade drowning in guilt, hiding from a town that hated him, protecting ghosts who would never come back. Daylight whispered that love couldn't rewrite the past. Still, I kept returning to the station, and each time Adrian let me closer. He wasn't good at saying what he felt, but it was therein the way his hand lingered at the small of my back when we sat on the platform, in the way he softened when I laughed, in the way his eyes searched for me the second I appeared at the edge of the tracks. But happiness has a way of drawing attention. The first crack came from my roommate. "Eli," he said one evening, tossing his backpack on the couch. "Where the hell do you keep disappearing to? Don't tell me it's the station again." My chest tightened. "Why?" He gave me a look that was half concern, half exasperation. "Because people are talking. Some old guy at the diner swore he saw you sneaking around there at night. You don't get it, this town hates that place. They say the bastard who caused the wreck still haunts it. You don't want to be anywhere near him when they find out." I forced a laugh, but it came out too sharp. People love their ghost stories. "Eli, I'm serious. If there's really someone out there, someone connected to what happened, you know what they'd do if they caught him? Or you?" His words hit too close to the truth. I muttered something about homework and locked myself in my room before I gave myself away. The second crack came from the town itself. I noticed more people lingering near the riverbank, glancing at the abandoned station like they expected it to burst into flames. A group of teenagers dared each other to cross the tracks, laughing nervously as they threw rocks at the broken windows. And then, one night, I spotted a figure with a flashlight prowling near the platform. My stomach dropped when I realized it wasn't Adrian, it was the sheriff. I ducked behind the bushes, my pulse hammering. He swept the beam across the station, lingering on the doors, the windows, the tracks swallowed by weeds. For a terrifying moment, I thought he'd go inside. But then he muttered something under his breath and turned back toward town. When I finally slipped onto the platform, Adrian was waiting in the shadows. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched. "They're coming closer," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with panic. "I told you this place isn't safe." "Then leave," I whispered. "Come with me. You don't have to stay here." His laugh was bitter. "And go where? I'm already dead to them, Eli. If they see me, they'll finish what they started years ago." "Then let me stay with you." He stared at me, stunned. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do. I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid of losing you." His expression cracked, grief and longing warring inside him. He reached for me, then stopped, as if afraid his touch would doom us both. "Eli," he said hoarsely, "if you choose me, you're choosing a life in shadows." I swallowed hard. "Then let's build our own light." For a while we tried. We carved out a fragile happiness in the ruins. Adrian showed me the hidden corners of the station, the old conductor's room, still cluttered with rusted lanterns and timetables. The ticket booth, its glass shattered but its drawer still full of faded stubs. The secret staircase that led down to a storage tunnel beneath the tracks. It was down there, in the dark, that I kissed him again. Longer this time. Slower. The kind of kiss that said, "I'm not running from this anymore." And he kissed me back like a starving man finally tasting life again. But the outside world doesn't forgive so easily. One night, as I walked to the station, I heard voices before I even reached the platform. Angry, slurred, the kind of voices that reeked of alcohol and hatred. "Bet the bastard's still here," one man said. "Saw footprints by the tracks last week. Should have drowned him when we had the chance." My blood ran cold. I crouched low, heart racing, as I saw 3 men with flashlights prowling near the station. Their boots crunched on the gravel, their eyes full of vengeance. Adrian was inside. He didn't know. I bolted forward before fear could stop me. I found him sitting by the lantern we'd left on the platform, reading one of the old train manuals like it was holy scripture. His head jerked up at the sound of my footsteps, relief flashing in his eyes, then confusion when he saw my panic. "They're here," I gasped. "3 of them. Looking for you." His face hardened instantly. He snuffed the lantern with one swift motion, plunging us into darkness. "Go home, Eli. I'm not leaving you. You don't understand if they see you with me. I don't care." My voice cracked. "I'm not letting them hurt you." For a moment, he just stared at me, torn between fury and something softer. Then he grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the hidden staircase. We slipped into the tunnel just as the men stormed the platform. Their flashlights cut through the dark, sweeping across the walls, the broken beams, the scattered debris. "Cowards hiding," one sneered. "We'll flush him out." I pressed against Adrian's chest in the shadows, his arms around me, his breath steady despite the danger. My heart pounded so loudly I thought they'd hear it. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the men cursed and stumbled back toward town, vowing to return with more. Only then did Adrian loosen his grip, his forehead dropping to my shoulder. "This is what I was afraid of," he whispered. "You being dragged into my ruin." I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. "We'll find a way. We'll prove you're not the villain they think you are. But you can't keep hiding forever, Adrian." His eyes burned with both fear and hope. "And if they don't forgive me, then we'll run. Together." That was the first time he didn't argue. The first time he let himself believe there might be a future beyond the ghosts. And yet, even as I held him in that tunnel, I couldn't shake the feeling that the river wasn't done with us, that the past had one last wave to crash before it would ever let him go. The days after the confrontation blurred into a storm of fear and longing. Every night I went to the station, knowing we were living on borrowed time. Adrian tried to keep me away, but he no longer had the strength or the will to push me out of his world. The town's whispers grew louder. They were convinced someone was hiding at the Riverside station. They wanted blood, not answers. And Adrian, despite his hardened mask, began to unravel. I saw it in the way he watched the river like it might rise again and swallow him whole. In the way his hands trembled when he thought I wasn't looking. I wanted to take him far away, to a place where no one knew his name or his ghosts. But Adrian wasn't the kind of man who could abandon his guilt. He needed to face it even if it destroyed him. The breaking point came on a night thick with thunder. I found him standing on the platform, soaked by rain, staring at the tracks with a look that hollowed me out. "I can't run anymore," he said without turning. "If I keep hiding, they'll never stop. And you'll never be safe." My throat tightened. "What are you going to do?" He finally looked at me, eyes blazing with a desperate kind of peace. "Tell the truth. All of it." Fear surged through me. "Adrian, they don't want the truth, they want someone to blame. They'll tear you apart. Maybe I deserve it." "No," I said fiercely, grabbing his arm. "You don't. You've punished yourself enough. You've carried this alone for 10 years. Let me carry it with you. We'll tell the truth together." For the first time, he looked at me not with resistance, but with surrender. He pulled me into his arms, holding me like I was the only anchor left in his storm. "If I lose everything," he whispered, "at least I won't lose you." The town gathered in the square the next day. Word had spread. Someone was finally stepping forward. I stood beside Adrian as he faced the sheriff, the townsfolk, the survivors of the flood. My hand brushed against his, a silent promise that I wouldn't let go. His voice shook at first, but grew stronger as he spoke. He told them everything: the warnings he gave, the orders ignored, the patchwork repairs he'd been forced to make. He admitted his guilt, his failures, his endless nights of haunting memory. But then he said something that stunned them all. "I stayed at the station because I couldn't leave them behind. Because if no one remembered what happened, then they would have died for nothing. I know I can't undo the past, but I can keep watch. I can carry their names. And I will until the day I die." Silence followed, heavy and unyielding. Some faces softened, others hardened. The sheriff studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "You were young," he said gruffly, "and you weren't the only one at fault. The company buried its share of blame and we let it. Maybe we needed someone to hate. Maybe that was easier than grieving." The crowd rippled with uneasy murmurs. Not forgiveness, not yet. But something had shifted. The hatred wasn't absolute anymore. That night, Adrian and I returned to the station. The storm had passed, leaving the air cool and clear. He sat beside me on the platform, the river whispering below. For the first time since I met him, he didn't look like a ghost chained to this place. He looked alive. "I thought facing them would kill me," he admitted. "But it feels lighter, like maybe I can breathe again." I smiled, threading my fingers through his. "That's because you're not carrying it alone anymore." He turned to me then, eyes softer than I'd ever seen. "Eli, I don't know how you found me or why you stayed, but you saved me." Tears pricked my eyes. "No, you saved yourself. I just refused to let you do it alone." And then he kissed me. Not desperate, not broken, just pure, unguarded love. The kind that heals. The kind that promises tomorrow. In the weeks that followed, the station changed. People stopped calling it cursed. Some even began leaving flowers on the platform, honoring those lost instead of burying their memory. Adrian no longer stood guard alone. Sometimes he worked with the townsfolk, helping clean the place, turning it into a memorial instead of a ruin. Other times, he simply sat beside me, our hands entwined, our silence filled with something warm instead of heavy. The ghosts didn't vanish, but they no longer haunted him. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the river, I leaned against his shoulder and whispered, "Do you ever think about leaving?" He smiled faintly. "Not anymore. This place isn't my prison. Not with you here. It's our beginning." I closed my eyes, breathing him in, knowing he was right. The abandoned Riverside station wasn't just where I found Adrian. It was where we found ourselves, two broken souls who had been waiting, without knowing, to collide. And together, we would keep it secret, not as a curse, but as a promise. That even the darkest ruins can hold the brightest love. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.